Good evening and welcome to the Spring 2022 Speech Night. My name is Professor Ryan Guy and I am the Director of Speech and Debate here at Modesto Junior College, and it is my absolute privilege to welcome you all to the event. Tonight you're going to have an opportunity to meet some of the members of the Modesto Junior College Speech and Debate team as they put forward a wide selection of the competitive events that they've been working on over the course of the last competitive season. You're going to get a chance to watch some limited preparation speaking, some oral interpretation, some platform events, and finally, a debate. Before we begin, I just want to issue a couple brief thank yous. A huge thank you goes out to all of the faculty of the Communication Studies Department. You have been a huge support to us over the year, and I really appreciate your backup. I also want to thank the folks over in the Arts, Humanities, and Communication Division office. They have also been a huge support to the team and given us the things that we need. You all rock. Thank you. And lastly, I want to just give a big thanks to the members of the Modesto Junior College Speech and Debate team. Your hard work and perseverance through this year has been inspiring. It has been my honor to be one of your coaches, and I want to thank you for all that you do. With that, I want to take a brief opportunity here to introduce the team to you before we get to the show. So, in no particular order, the members of the 2022 Modesto Junior College Speech and Debate team are as follows: Joshua Bruce, Kylie Duncan, Zachary Ernst, Lexi Fritas, Sierra Pangelinan, Christina Peterson, Alexis Rangel, Lauren Walton, Grant Wise, and Leighton Soom. Finally, folks, big thank you goes out to y'all for tuning in tonight and watching. I hope you enjoy the show.
The event you are about to see is Impromptu Speaking. This is a limited preparation event. In this speech, the speaker is given a set of random prompts and has only 2 minutes to prepare a 5-minute speech. Despite the time crunch, the speaker is still expected to be organized, produce substantive content, and deliver the presentation with style. Tonight's impromptu speaker will be Christina Peterson. Christina recently took silver in this event at the state championship.
Okay, pulling up my prompts, and I'll start my time now. Dad, how do I? This YouTube channel was founded by Rob Kennedy in 2020, where he creates videos to show kids how to do things that would stereotypically be passed down from a father. Things like how to shave your face or how to tie a tie. Rob says that his father left when he was a child, and so he never had the opportunity to learn these life lessons from his father. Simple, everyday tasks that many of us take for granted. Rob says that he creates these videos to give kids in those same circumstances the chance to have that opportunity, to learn from someone who shared their struggles. It's this idea of using past events to learn and better shape our future that leads me to the quotation I received. "You have to be where you are to get to where you need to go," by Amy Poehler. The way I interpret this quotation is that the places we are building blocks to where we're going. Because what Amy Poehler is saying is that our current and past events are things that we can learn from to better shape the outcome in the future. I strongly agree with this quotation, but to further explain why I agree, we will be applying it to 3 additional examples. The first being a biblical narrative, the first being a dating con, and finally the third being a livestock judge. First, let's take a look at the biblical story of Adam, but not in a traditional way. Here's what I'll say. What God gave Adam was a place that he had nothing to do with. God created Eden, and then he placed Adam. God says that before he gives you a person, he gives you a place. But many of us desire to place ourselves, especially in my generation. I'm about to move here. I'm about to move to Dallas. I'm about to move to LA. I'm about to move to New York. I'm about to move. They're searching for a place, and they're searching for people to validate the place that they're in. God desires to place us somewhere he knows purpose can happen. But what we can learn from this biblical story of Adam is that the places we are building blocks to where we're going. The very same way that I interpreted the quotation by Amy Poehler. It's saying the way we are right now and the places, whether they be physical or not, the places we are now can truly transform the outlook we have later in life. However, this quotation doesn't just function on this narrative level, because we can also see it live through my next example of the Tinder swindler. Now, I'm sure we've all been on that one bad date, but it probably wasn't as bad as the Tinder swindler. This name may sound fancy, but this man's real name is Simon Hyatt. He's a convicted fraudster who's used dating apps such as Tinder to meet hundreds of women, establish lines of loan and credit in their name, and leave them with the bill. He had a strict plot. Step 1, match with a woman on Tinder. Step 2, take them on a fancy date. Step 3, warn the woman about running into his enemies. Step 4, show them pictures of his beat-up bodyguard. Step 5, ask them for a credit card because his wasn't working. And finally, step 6, leave. Now you may be sitting there thinking, what idiot would fall for that? But you never know it's you until it is. You see, these women were in search of love. And whether they were wrong or right about the situation that they ended up in, we can see that they learned from their mistakes. They were able to take these events that they were currently in and use them to shape their future. They were able to finally put Simon Hyatt behind bars for the things he did to hundreds of women. So applying it to the biblical story of Adam, even though the place we are may seem negative in the very moment, we can see that they do truly transform our future and our current actions. And further applying it to Amy Poehler's quotation, we can see that the places that we currently are truly have the power to transform our future events. And in the same way that the women experiencing the Tinder swindler use their current state to affect their future, we can see that Ryan Rash did a very similar thing. It was an all-American moment. A grinning 16-year-old Ryan Rash resting his head on his grand champion steer after winning the blue ribbon at the National Western Stock Show. His steer earned $37,000 at auction and a trailer full of ribbons. But just as soon as he was given the check, it was taken away. You see, his parents had secretly fed the steer a steroid to give him the straight lines and muscular physique of a champion. This was devastating for Ryan because he had no idea. Since then, he has become a judge of these national shows and has advocated against these harmful substances. He used these past events to fuel his fire in the fight to advocate for sustainable agriculture. So applying this to the biblical narrative we explained earlier, we can see that the places he was at in the moment helped shape his future actions. And further applying it to the quotation of Amy Poehler, we can see that even though the place that he was in seemed to be very negative and devastating at the time, it proved to be something that truly fueled his fire to get him going in the direction he wanted. So in turn, we can see that these three examples, the biblical story of Adam, the Tinder swindler and the women he influenced, and finally third, Ryan Rash, all cause us to agree with the quotation. You have to be where you are to get where you need to go, by Amy Poehler. And what Poehler was saying is that the places that we are building blocks to where we're going to. And further, we saw this to be true with Rob Kennedy. Even though his father left him when he was just a child and he was missing out on these life opportunities that normally a father would provide, we can see that he came out stronger than ever because of them. Those times that he was in, even though they were difficult in the moment, seemed to fuel his fire into helping other kids in the future.
The next event you will see tonight is a communication analysis. This type of speech introduces interesting or controversial communicative artifacts and seeks to help the audience understand them by analyzing them through a lens of a rhetorical theory. The speaker you will hear from tonight is Alexis Rangel. Alexis recently took gold in communication analysis at the state championship.
The streets of war-torn Kabul, Afghanistan, have remained largely in disarray for the last 20 years. From the U.S. occupation to the eventual recapture of the city by the Taliban this past fall, images of destruction have served as a potent metaphor for the lives of women in the country. However, since 2014, there has been a voice of dissent, silently transgressing the ruins of the city. From the rubble, the street artist, Shamsia Hassani, has literally provided a colorful blast of defiance to the physical and ideological forces that seek to silence her. In a 2018 interview with the website Street Art Bio, Hassani mentions how her work forces people to see the tragedy behind the lives that women live in Afghanistan, while also showing them as bigger than what they are in reality. Hassani's work is ripe for analysis. Thus the following research question: how does Shamsia Hassani's street art reconceptualize women in the public sphere of Afghanistan? To analyze Hassani's work, we begin by first sketching out a rhetorical model, then shaking up some analysis, before finally painting a complicated set of implications. First, the model. Lucia Palmer provides a rhetorical framework in an article published in the 2017 International Journal of Communication. Palmer analyzes street art in Bolivia and argues that art has the power to breach exclusionary public spaces and challenge colonialism. Three major rhetorical tenets emerge. First, street art is a potent, creative form of recovering space. Second, a means to build counterpublics. And third, methods to challenge structures of oppression. First, street art is a potent, creative form of recovering space. Palmer argues that street art has historically been used as a form of subversive political expression. This is especially true in communities that face economic and social erasure. In Cochabamba, Bolivia, there is a public plaza where women and children are stenciled into life-size portraits. Palmer notes that this forces passers-by to see those who they might otherwise ignore. As city officials painted over these images, they re-emerged within days. The second tenet describes counterpublics. Palmer suggests that street art is a form of visual networking. Images do not function in isolation. Instead, street art references other works to connect movements. Palmer points to examples like this one, of Snow White with a rifle. It stylistically borrows from the works of Blake Lerat and Banksy by juxtaposing popular culture with violent imagery. Networks grow when viewers recognize the references or share them via social media. The last tenet describes methods to challenge structures of oppression. Palmer's analysis of the graffiti in Bolivia found that it directly engages with political and social issues. Palmer highlights examples like this one, which challenge a controversial plan to build a highway through indigenous land. Thus, we can see that street art has the ability to 1. Make visible those who are otherwise invisible in public spaces. 2. Connect global communities over shared injustices. And 3. Use visual advocacy to address current controversies. Now that we've outlined Palmer's rhetorical model, we can use these tenets to truly understand Hassani's street art. So, first, does Hassani's street art make the invisible visible? I argue yes. Take the woman depicted here. She is shown with shut eyes and no mouth. In an August 2021 article from Deutsche Welle, they quote Hassani as saying, "Her eyes are closed, because usually she has nothing good around herself to see, and sometimes she cannot even see her own future. But it doesn't mean she cannot actually see." According to the United Nations 2020 Human Development Report, Afghanistan ranks amongst the least favorable on the Gender Inequality Index. Hassani makes these constraints on women known in her work. However, she also voices a silent optimism. Notice the character's upward momentum. We see her at the peak of swinging forward, weightless, and on the verge of flight. She is surrounded by dandelions, a plant known for their resilience in harsh conditions. Visuals like these ask us to publicly reflect on Afghan women's lived experiences. The second tenet describes counterpublics. The New York Times reported on September 15, 2021, that there will be an increasing struggle for women in Afghanistan to navigate a patriarchal society deeply hostile towards equal rights for women. This image was posted to Hassani's Instagram on May 13, 2020. It was painted amidst the rubble of a maternity hospital where Taliban insurgents had killed multiple women and their newborn babies. What would have been written off as collateral damage in a war zone is now etched into collective memory. The last tenet describes methods to challenge structures of oppression. CBS News reported in September 2021 that within hours of taking over, the new Taliban-led government had ordered all women and girls to stay in their homes. With access to the public literally forbidden, Hassani's work challenges these exclusionary mandates. Daily Mail authors Will Stewart and Emma Scully wrote on September 5, 2021, Shamshia Hassani's street art breaks the stereotype of a passive Muslim woman. In fact, her graffiti art is giving Afghan women a voice and is inspiring thousands around the world. So we can return to our research question. How does Shamshia Hassani's street art reconceptualize women in the public sphere of Afghanistan? Hassani depicts women as vibrant, expressive, and central contributors to the public sphere. They are shown in colorful clothing holding musical instruments, a powerful form of expression even without a voice. Additionally, her street art establishes a fresh point of view that forces global communities to consider the domestic and personal implications of foreign policy. Now that we've outlined Palmer's rhetorical model and applied these tenets to Hassani's work, we can discuss two implications: the subversion of traditional public discourse, and second, conflicts with personal celebrity. First, in response to our research question, there is no doubt that Hassani's work serves as a powerful, persuasive statement regarding the increasingly limited lives women live in Afghanistan. As the Taliban have regained control, they have limited free expression, particularly of women. Al Jazeera reported in September that the new government has warned women not to protest, threatened journalists not to cover, and has fired upon demonstrators who don't comply. In an August 2021 article from the Human Rights Watch, author Heather Barr argues that the Taliban has a long history of claiming to respect women while implementing policies that seek to remove them from the public. In a time where voicing dissent publicly is increasingly difficult, the subversive element of Hassani's work may be harder to suppress. As mentioned in our model, graffiti has the power to speak loudly, but normal means are not available. Second, Hassani's own celebrity impacts the reach of her message. Since the Taliban takeover, Hassani has been in hiding. In September, she posted the Taliban had painted over most of her work. Her future is uncertain, and future public works may result in jail time, lashings, or even execution. Here, we see a conflict with celebrity and counter-publicity. Catherine Squires notes in the May 2006 Journal of Communication that counter-publics have difficulty persisting when rhetorical acts are widely visible to outsiders. In Shreya Shrimani's 2013 article in the Journal of American Anthropology Association, she notes that this happened with Occupy Wall Street. Counter-publics, partnered with a social media presence, are susceptible to infiltration, manipulation, and even co-option by the state. The literal erasure of Hassani's work by the Taliban significantly limits the reach of her message. However, digital publics are persistent. Perhaps her continued advocacy in the digital realm can help keep the movement alive when public forms of expression have been forbidden. So today, we sought to answer the research question: How does Shamsia Hassani's street art reconceptualize women in the public sphere of Afghanistan? Through an exploration of a rhetorical model, we applied these tenets to Hassani's work and discussed several implications. The lives of women in Afghanistan are likely to be more and more limited under Taliban rule. Much of the future is uncertain, and like the women in her work, we may not be able to see it. However, only time will tell if Hassani's work can open our eyes to a brighter future.
The next event is Prose. In this presentation, the speaker performs a piece of published literature. Performers seek to move audiences and make their point by embodying the characters and inviting viewers to become immersed in the act of storytelling. The performer you will see tonight is Kylie Duncan. Kylie recently took bronze with this performance at the state championship.
The summer of my 16th birthday, my best friend Magdalena and I made a pact. We would get out of our poverty-stricken country, Albania, and move to the United States of America. So that summer, I got my first job. There weren't a lot of options to choose from, so one day, Magdalena and I rode our bicycles to the edge of town, chained them against a rusted chain-link fence surrounding a former communist warehouse, where a thin man wearing thick glasses stared at us up and down and wrote our names in his tiny yellow ledger to take apart bullets at an ammunition dismantling factory. Now, to say factory is slightly misleading. You'd think they took us into some training program or showed us how to dismantle them safely, when in fact I just walked in, a wide-eyed 16-year-old wearing cut-off jeans and a Guns N' Roses tank top, holding hands with my best friend. And we learned how to do the job simply by watching the other women do it. Under one of the harshest communist regimes in the world, Albania had produced over 90,000 tons of these bullets. Already, this story of Gypsy and her friend Magdalena poses an important question. Does the end ever justify the means? To these two teenage girls, their wishes for freedom lead them to employment at an ammunition dismantling factory. But they soon realize that this choice will come with both personal and political conflicts of its own. But how can they give up their one chance at a ticket out of hell? In Charlotte Knowles' 2019 article in the journal Hypatia, she argues that we must recognize the ways coercive social settings lead to oppression. For instance, our socioeconomic status may dictate the jobs we willingly do. However, she adds that individuals must recognize the role that they play. It may not always be possible to avoid complicity under oppression. That doesn't mean you don't owe a debt. This is Gunpowder Money by Gypsy Yo. Now that the Cold War was over, the American government generously gave millions of dollars to the new Albanian government to get rid of the old stockpile from the Cold War. Now, instead of buying technology and hiring experts to do the job, the new Albanian government thought that the most cost-efficient way was to hire a bunch of housewives and teenage girls to break apart each bullet by hand. 16 cents an hour. Now, my future depended on me being good at this job, so I took it very seriously. I used a pair of pliers and my finger to scrape apart the powder on the inside of these shells. On my finger to my hand up to my elbow, to the entire length of my arm to scrape apart the powder from these shells that sometimes were even taller than I. I worked next to a bunch of other teenage girls who probably had the same hopes as I did. But among them all, the most beautiful one was my best friend, Magdalena. In another life, she could have been a movie star in this town. To me, her most striking feature were her milky white hands. Now, even though she worked in gunpowder all day long, her nails were perfectly done, painted red every single evening. Halfway through the summer, the job changed. We were dismantling less, and now the old man hired us to repackage the old bullets inside of the new boxes. So I lined them up, 15 in a box like tubes of lipstick. And they went inside crates that, at the end of the day, went inside the belly of a dark, unmarked airplane parked behind the warehouse. Now, loading of that airplane was our favorite time of the day. As teenage girls, we would try to clean up as best as we can from the gunpowder and the smoke and sit on the back dock, smiling and stealing the glances from the teenage boys hired to load these crates inside of the airplanes. During those golden afternoons filled with flirtations and hope, not once did we stop to wonder, what's the final destination of this airplane? I was just a kid among other kids, and this job was just a means to an end. It meant for Magdalena and I, we could save up toward our one-way ticket to the United States of America. It meant that I could go to college and help support my parents. And I was so naive that I wasn't terrified by what I'd done. But everything changed one unbearably hot August afternoon. Temperatures would easily rise over 100 degrees in the warehouse. It seemed whichever way I turned, I bumped into another sweaty body or a mountain of really hot metal. 10 minutes before lunch break, Rita had backed up from her station carrying a heavy box filled with 9mm bullets. Her thin frame started to cave in under the weight. Right before she stumbled, Magdalena had out a hand to break her fall. But it was too late. The box came crashing down on the floor and bullets started flying everywhere, sparking like a fireworks display as they came in touch with the brick wall, the concrete floor, and the hot tables. A wave of screams and panics just took over the warehouse as women and girls rushed toward the one exiting door, pulling and pushing, limbs tangled together like one massive body. I dove under a table. I held my head in my hands and I rocked back and forth, paralyzed in fear. I kept my eyes shut so I wouldn't see the shape of my own death. I prayed that it would be quick and clean. I cried out, Magdalena! She never answered back. I could hear the screaming and the sobbing. I couldn't tell if I was the one doing it. The chaos lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. When the spark subsided, I slowly crawled out from under the table on my hands and my knees until they felt wet. Then right in front of me on that concrete floor, I saw two milky white fingers with ruby red nails stained in blood. And next to them, Magdalena, kneeling pale as a ghost, her maimed hand wrapped inside her skirt. Help me, help me, help me put them back on. I couldn't stop staring at those fingers that had so many times braided my hair, now pointing like a warning towards the one exit door. Okay, let's get out of here. I was not hurt in that accident, but others were not so fortunate. Magdalena's fingers were forever gone, so was her ability to work, her dreams. I couldn't go back to working there. These things that I had pretended were tubes of lipstick were not. They had been shipped to the worst conflicts in the world: Afghanistan, Congo, Syria. To this day, I am shaken by the idea of my own fingerprints upon them. But a week after my graduation, I got my student visa to come to the United States, and I bought my one-way ticket out. With my sweat and my blood money, my gunpowder money, I bought a life that I owe to every single girl that I left behind in that warehouse. And a life I owe to my best friend to make it worth something.
Next, you will hear a persuasive speech. This is a presentation that seeks to identify and describe an ongoing problem. The speaker uses emotion, logic, and credibility in an attempt to urge the audience to act on a controversial issue. Tonight, Christina Peterson will present her persuasive speech. Christina recently took first place with this performance at the Regional Championship Tournament.
In 2011, 22-year-old Army Private Michael Lee Sparling was 10 minutes into a run with his unit when he collapsed from cardiac arrest. Toxicology results identified DMAA in his blood, an ingredient in the popular supplement he'd recently started taking known as Jacked. But it wasn't just Michael. The same ingredient was found in the toxicology report of a second soldier whose heart stopped during a 2-mile fitness test. She fell into a coma and died just weeks later. These cases became part of a growing concern about the use of DMAA in workout supplements, leading the US to ban the ingredient in 2013. Problem solved, right? Well, not exactly. As we will see, these cases illustrate an ongoing problem with the regulation and marketing of supplements. A January 2020 Boston Globe article puts it this way: "Welcome to the Wild West section of your local pharmacy, otherwise known as the dietary supplements aisle. A place so dangerous and so unregulated that it would try the most dedicated libertarian. In these aisles, we find an array of pills, protein powders, and juices that promise us a smaller waist, improved concentration, disease prevention and treatment, rapid muscle growth, and improved sexual performance." According to Tamar Haspel, in a June 2020 article from the Washington Post, Americans invest in these claims to the tune of $35 billion every year. Thus, I'm here to convince you that we must significantly increase regulation on the supplement industry. So today, we will weigh out the problems posed by dietary supplements, label their known causes, and finally dispense some necessary solutions. First, let's examine the problems. The dietary supplement market is a massive industry, but the problem is that the industry is largely unregulated, resulting in harm from both the composition of these products and the medical misinformation they spread. Let's start by looking at product composition. Many supplements that have been deemed safe, including protein powders, energy bars, and herbal products, have been recently reported as containing more than just sugar and calories. An April 2020 study by Harvard Health has reported finding 130 types of toxins in these products, including heavy metals such as lead, arsenic, cadmium, mercury, BPA, which is used to make plastic, and even pesticides, with links to cancer and other health conditions. Some of these toxins were present in significant quantities. For example, one protein powder contained 25 times the allowed limit of EPA. Furthermore, according to the previously cited Boston Globe article, weight loss, energy, and other supplements send tens of thousands of people to the emergency room each year. Some of those have led to liver failure and death. In fact, Dr. Jen Gunter reports in a June 2021 TED Talk that 20% of liver injuries actually come from supplement use. This leads us to the second issue. Medical misinformation has made supplements even more popular. In the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic, when medical care became harder to access, people turned to vitamins and supplements. According to a July 2021 video posted by the American Medical Association, COVID created a prime opportunity for supplements to market themselves as immune-boosting treatments and cures. A 2021 report from the New York Times even details claims that people were better off with a cocktail of drugs and supplements instead of vaccination. It sounds like the Boston Globe was right. The supplement industry is the Wild West. But why? Let's examine the two key causes. First, current laws don't go far enough to regulate supplement standards. Currently, the FDA regulates dietary supplements under a different set of regulations than those covering conventional food and drug products. The Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, DSHEA, outlines these in Section 403I. Any ingredient present in a significant quantity must be listed on a label. However, anything that isn't significant doesn't have to be listed. However, I've already mentioned that some substances like BPA far exceed allowed limits and are never put on the label. Things actually get more complicated from here. Remember DMAA? A 2021 FDA fact sheet describes DMAA as an unsafe food additive that can lead to heart attack, seizures, and other neurological and psychological conditions. This is why it was banned in 2013. Well, research published in the March 2021 issue of Clinical Toxicology analyzed 17 supplement brands. They found that many included more than one prohibited substance, including DMAA. The authors emphasize that these stimulants have never been tested in humans and that their safety is unknown. However, the current law doesn't require supplements to be proven safe. In fact, according to the FDA's website, last accessed September 18, 2021, the current law doesn't even require that claims on a label be accurate or truthful. Take Prevagen, a dietary supplement that claims to treat Alzheimer's by improving memory and supporting brain function. Jessica Rich, director of the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection, says in a June 2020 article that for years, the marketers of Prevagen have preyed on the fears of older consumers experiencing age-related memory loss. Second, powerful political lobbying has prevented newer regulations on dietary supplements. Prior to the DSHEA Act of 1994, the FDA was angling for strong regulations. But lobbyists had other ideas. A 2016 article on The Atlantic explains that this attempt was countered by one of the most intense lobbying campaigns in history, in which TV commercials warned citizens that the government was coming for their vitamins. Jane Henney, FDA commissioner from 1998 to 2001, says of the article, "It was tremendous. The continued lack of regulation ushers the use of harmful substances and false promises. Thus, we must push for stricter regulation for supplement manufacturers. To solve this problem, we must fundamentally restructure supplement regulation. Currently, the FDA plays a reactionary role. Only after a product enters the market and causes harm do they step in. We must take preventative steps instead. First and foremost, Congress must overhaul and update the DSHEA Act of 1994. The current law needs to be amended to require the disclosure of all ingredients. This would include eliminating the loophole where companies simply list proprietary blends instead of full ingredient lists. Further, we must require initial FDA muster of a product's claims before they're ever put on a label. Second, the current regulation of conventional pharmaceuticals and food products must be extended to the supplement industry. This would include monitoring product ingredients over time. According to a November 2020 study by the American Medical Association, approximately 75,000 new supplements have been introduced since 1994. Yet the FDA has only received adequate safety data for less than 250 new ingredients. Not only do these supplements need to pass initial FDA muster, they must be subject to reevaluation anytime they change their formula, just like all other pharmaceuticals. This would include establishing a registry with data on all ingredients manufacturers add to their supplements. Finally, we can work collectively to educate ourselves and protect our own health. An April 2020 study by Harvard Health warns that while supplements may be helpful, they are not always necessary. Instead, we should prioritize eating whole foods. We should also increase patient, healthcare practitioner, and retailer awareness to help consumers build label literacy. The AMA also strongly urges physicians to have risk-based conversations with their patients prior to using supplements. At the end of my speech, I'll share a website that I created that details these resources and solutions in more detail. Supplements are sold to help us achieve our health and well-being goals. But once the benefit of those supplements is outweighed by the harms, their value is gone. Through examining the problems, causes, and solutions, we have seen that stories like Michael Lee Sparling's can be prevented. The supplement industry must be subject to stricter regulation and enforcement. In fact, our lives depend on it.
We have come to our final event, debate. In this style of debate, speakers are randomly assigned to argue opposing sides of a controversial issue. Debate is a true test of critical thinking and strategy because speakers must often argue for a side they may not personally agree with. Despite this, the speakers must identify and present a valid and compelling case in order to win. The team who prepares the best arguments for their side is declared the winner. In this debate, you will hear from an affirmative speaker and a negative speaker. Tonight, our debaters are Zachary Ernest on the affirmative and Joshua Bruce on the negative. Zachary recently took silver in this event at the Regional Championship Tournament, while Joshua previously took silver at the Griffin Invitational Tournament. I'll now turn the floor over to Professor Ryan Guy to get the debate started.
Thanks for that, Tori. All right, well, good evening, folks, and welcome back. I'm excited to get the debate portion of the evening off and going. We've got our two debaters here, and they have prepped out their case. And so without further ado, it's my pleasure to go ahead and call this house to order. With that, let's begin. All right, we'll begin this debate with the first affirmative constructive speech and turn this over to Zachary. Zachary, you get up to 5 minutes for the speech, and we're ready when you are.
All right, thank you very much. I'll be beginning my timer starting now. So the resolution for this debate is that in college, online courses are preferable to face-to-face courses. That is a resolution. Allow me to move on to the observation one, the resolutional analysis. Let's quickly begin by starting off with some key terms. But first and foremost, I'd like to thank the judge for being out here for this debate, and especially the Speaker of the House for being able to make sure that the debate runs smoothly. I'd also like to thank my opponent for being out here so that we could have this debate in the first place. Without you, this would not have happened. So allow me to jump in straight to the resolutional analysis, the key terms. So the key terms, the two key terms that I'm going to define today are going to be online courses and face-to-face courses. The first definition I have is, according to Law Insider, online courses refers to a course where all learn activities are done online. Online classes can be conducted asynchronously, synchronously, or a combination of both. Furthermore, for face-to-face courses, the definition for this is that a traditional higher education course that occurs with the learner and the instructor physically located in the same place at the same time. This is by IGI Global. Everything else will be defined contextually throughout this debate. If you have any questions, please ask. Regarding this, for the weighting mechanism for this, the we need to establish that it's going to be through the lens of utilitarianism. This means that if I'm able to prove that online education does more good for individuals, I believe that I should win this debate. However, if I'm not able to prove this, or my opponent proves face-to-face education is preferable, I believe that they should win this debate. Allow me to move on towards observation 2, which is the background for this debate. The background for this debate is that college education has traditionally taken place in face-to-face formats. It has gone on through college in a majority of human understanding. Furthermore, however, due to COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a shift towards online learning due to certain circumstances. Many initially regarded online classes as an inferior form of learning due to the new and misunderstanding of the format. However, technology has evolved and teachers and students have developed these online skills over the last 2 years. And I believe that it's time we examine the real benefits that come with online courses. So allow me to move on towards my first contention, which is titled flexibility. My claim for this argument is that online classes are preferable because they are more flexible in terms of time. This is very important for students who work and especially for students who have children. My data for this argument is that in a report in 2020 from the National Center for Education Statistics, 43% of full-time undergrad students and 81% of part-time undergrad students are working. This means that a large majority of students are currently balancing school along with their jobs. And this is absolutely essential. Furthermore, the second evidence I have is another 2020 report by the Institute for Women's Policy Research. It's that 1 in 5 college students are a parent. This accounts for approximately 3.8 million students. So allow me to move on to the war and why this is important. This is important because this showcases that online classes are preferable because a majority of individuals, specifically students, have other responsibilities that require time. Furthermore, this includes holding down a job and caring for family in addition to their coursework. This is absolutely insane because doing for campus, in-person classes means you have to invest commute time and gas money, which is no small thing. The average for March 8th was $4.32, and it's only been rising. This is a massive expense to add on to the current responsibility that parents and people with jobs have to face. Furthermore, students are held to an inflexible schedule instead of being able to work through the content when it is convenient for them. And online courses make that much more preferable due to doing it specifically asynchronous on their own time. Furthermore, with contention 2, it is classified as modernized learning. My claim for this argument is that online learning is preferable because it modernizes higher education. The data for this is actually from Harvard Business Review, written by Sean Gallagher and Jason Palmer. They put it this way, as I quote, "Higher education has significantly lagged behind other industries in moving to a more digitally driven, outcome-focused business model. One measure of this is that it is less than 5% of college budgets are dedicated to IT spending. Education is one of the least digitized and most people-intensive economic sectors." Furthermore, for the second evidence I have is that this is especially important because there is a high demand for online classes. An article from Inside Higher Education by Suzanne Smalley explains that in 2019 to 2020, 51.8% of students took at least one online course. And this is especially important to note that this explicitly excluded courses that were moved online due to the pandemic. And that is why I have to go towards the warrant. We can showcase that the online learning is preferable because it modernizes education. It allows for individuals to be able to do it in a new and especially better outlook on the new education. And that is why these benefits are clear, that online learning is preferable. Thank you very much.
All right, and thank you very much for that. We'll now go ahead and open things up for a period of cross-examination. Joshua is the negative. You have 2 minutes to ask questions of your opponent. Ready when you are.
I'm going to start my timer now. Thank you, Judge. Hey, Zach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. How are you doing today?
We are here at Speech Night. Let's do this.
Indeed we are.
So, hey, look, I got a few cross-section questions I want to go over with you. So first, let's look at the weighing mechanism here. As the affirmative, you need to prove that online courses are actually better than face-to-face courses. But I can win by either proving that face-to-face classes are better or that online and face-to-face learning is equal. Is that correct?
Yes, we are looking through this through the lens of utilitarianism, so that would be correct.
All right, thank you. Let's go to my second question here. I have, okay, so on your first contention, you argue that, let me see here, online classes are more flexible. Is this still true? In a world where online classes require students to log into Zoom at specific times?
Yes, that would be correct because the time sync that is in-person classes also has commute time and a bunch of other ideals. So that would be semi-correct. Online classes are more preferable in that regard.
So you make a point that 1 in 5 college students is a parent. How does taking an online class, especially ones that still meet synchronously, make it easier for these parents?
The reason it makes it easier is simply due to the fact of time. The moment class is happening, they're able to, once class finishes, they're able to devote all of their time towards their children. However, with in-person classes, it still requires commute time and a bunch of other time sinks.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. You know what? Actually, that is my questions that I have for you right now.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
have a few more seconds. I'm going to jump to, I'm going to end this for now, Judge.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for a good cross-ex period. Let's go ahead and officially turn things over to the negative for the first negative constructive speech. Joshua, you get up to 6 minutes with for this one, but please start us off with just a quick, brief off-time roadmap.
Okay. So first, Judge, we're going to go ahead and dive into the top of case. And then I want to talk about the 2 contentions that were brought forth by the AF. And then I'm going to dive into my negation case. And I have actually today, Judge, 2 counter contentions. All right, started my timer now. Thank you, Judge, for being here. Thank you, Zach, for being on the side. I am glad to be a part of this debate. Debates are great. And honestly, this is a great topic that we really should be discussing. So first and foremost, I want to just jump into a few aspects of the background, or not the background, but top of the case. We are going to go ahead and accept the definitions, Judge. We think the weighing mechanism is fair, so we're going to go ahead and accept that. And yeah, everything they said about top of case is nothing there to contend. So I'm just going to first go into some rebuttals that I'd like to discuss from the AF case from their 2 contentions. So first one is flexibility. The AF wants you to believe that online courses make it easier to balance raising children and taking classes, but kids, especially young ones, require full attention. It is not easy to be a caregiver and focus on a lecture or activity at the same time. This is a great example of why distractions and multitasking exist in online learning. In comparison, this is where face-to-face education excels, Judge. There are campuses that offer daycare centers for parents enrolled in on-campus classes. For Zoom-based online classes, which are increasingly dominant form in online classes today, are significantly less flexible. Students will need to log in on any given day at a given time to participate. That means online classes are not inherently more flexible as the AF wants to present. And then the second contention brought forth by the AF, modernized learning. So first, building the infrastructure for online classes is resulting in decreased focus on updating face-to-face facilities, Judge, and that's important. We need to address that. In California, where many community colleges, where we are right now, need major upgrades, the state is investing millions to create a newly fully online community college. That funding should be used to create next-generation labs and classrooms for our actual campuses that are being neglected at this moment. Second, when you listen to the affirmative's own evidence, it says that 51.8% of students took at least one online course. This means that they may have also taken face-to-face courses, Judge, and we have no additional details. Maybe the online courses was the only section of that class that was being offered. Thus, we can't assume that these numbers will reflect inherent preference for online courses over face-to-face courses. So, Judge, I'm going to go ahead and dive now into my papers backwards. My case. I think I do have my papers backwards. I apologize, Judge. All right. So first, my counter contentions that I'd like to dive into. My first one is technical barriers. So my claim today is very simply put, online courses present technical barriers that make it more difficult or even impossible for some students to participate. So for my data, I have the digital divide exists. Online education has become more media rich and bandwidth heavy. Rural students are not able to participate due to slow or non-existent home internet. This affects a large number of our students. According to a 2021 report, From the Midwestern Higher Education Compact, approximately 16 to 19% of college students reported technology barriers, inadequate computer hardware, and internet connections that inhibited the participation in online learning. Online courses expect a certain level of technical expertise, Judge. Less tech savvy students, Judge, students are left behind. In fact, after the start of the pandemic, many students opted to not enroll in further classes because of this. A 2020 report by Ed Trust West explains that of students, that of students who left college, 82% of California college students cited uncertainty about online learning or new class formats as the reason that they are taking time off. Access to adequate connectivity and technology plays a critical role in that decision. And us being in the Central Valley, a very rural aspect of California, we should know this. We should understand this. So my warrant is very simple. We should build a college education system that is accessible. We should not prefer systems that include systemic barriers to large chunks of our community. So my second counter contention, Judge, is distractions. So for my claim, I state that students taking online courses suffer more distractions to their learning experience than those who take college classes in a face-to-face setting. So for my data, I have an article published by Rutgers University Writing Center. It spotlights a key problem with online classes. The need to use devices to participate means that students are unable to get away from distractions such as apps and social media. A 2021 article in the peer-reviewed Journal of Ecology and Evolution goes on to explain that online classes also create a unique psychological distraction related to self-image. Psychologists Frank R. Castelli and Mark A. Sarvari, I want to say that wrong, found that participants in their study were significantly less to focus on online courses content because that they were distracted by how they appeared on Zoom. They argued that the raw appearance and ability to see oneself in Zoom setting created several social anxiety for students who are used to highly curated online presence. In laboratories tests, students were mostly unable to focus on online coursework where they were able to see themselves on platforms like on Zoom. Online education also encourages multitasking. And that's an issue. Meta-analysis published in October 2020 issue found that food science education found that online learners were significantly more likely to multitask than face-to-face students during class. Simply put, thus, if the purpose of taking online classes in college is to learn, the distracting nature of online classes makes face-to-face education preferable, Judge. And that's the negation's case today.
All right, thank you for that constructive speech. Let's go ahead and move into our second period of cross-examination. Zachary, you control this one. You've got 2 minutes to ask questions of the negative. Ready when you are.
Got it. I will be starting my timer starting now. Wonderful speech, but I do have a couple of questions. Furthermore, the first question I have is, what are some of the main reasons for the digital divide that you mentioned in your first contention?
Well, some of the main reasons for the digital divide are individuals who are not as tech savvy, access to hardware and equipment, and access to reliable internet connection in certain regions of our valley.
Okay, got it. Reliable internet connection. Furthermore, to be clear, in your first contention, you're also arguing that the platform's online classes, like use Canvas and Zoom, are hard for many students to use. Is that correct?
I do believe that for some students, it is a challenge, yes.
All right. Very well. Another question I have is that you mentioned we need to build an education system that is accessible to students. Is there a reason why we should not focus on decreasing barriers to online classes for everyone?
That's a good question. I think it's more important when we are seeing ourselves go back to face-to-face, when this is a temporary situation, that our focus should be building that accessibility as opposed to fixing a temporary solution that's going to be coming to an end.
And you said temporary solution, is that correct?
This online learning situation, yes, I believe it is a temporary solution for our overall learning process.
All right. And furthermore, in your second contention, you focused on distractions. Could you please give some more examples of that? Some of the distractions.
Well, individuals who have apps and different programs that are sending notifications while they're on the same devices that are interacting with their schools, is taking their attention away and bringing it straight to these other services.
And very last question. Do you have any sources regarding a percentage of daycare centers in colleges?
It looks like I did not have any data points for that. I apologize.
I just wanted to confirm that. That is my time. Thank you very much.
All right, and thank you to Zach for that period of cross-examination. With that, we will now move into the rebuttal speeches, starting with the first affirmative rebuttal. Zachary, this one goes to you. You've got up to 3 minutes for this one, but please feel free to start us off with a brief off-time roadmap before you begin.
All right. For my brief off-time roadmap, I'll be going over the topic case, going over my opponent's contentions, 1 and 2, and then I will be going over towards my opponent's points on my contentions, 1 and 2. I'll be beginning my timer starting now. So specifically regarding the topic case, my opponent agreed both on the weighing mechanism and for the background, so I just want to quickly go over that and showcase that we both agree on these topics, and it'll be over through utilitarianism. So I will be going over towards my opponent's counter contention, specifically their counter contention number 1, which is titled technical barriers. First and foremost, that I agree that systemic barriers like the digital divide ought to be addressed. My opponent brought this up within the debate, and I believe that we should focus on that. However, the existence of technical barriers is an issue separate from whether or not online courses offer a quality learning experience that is a vastly would be preferable to a majority of students. And that is why I'd like to showcase that the recipe, while it may be bad simply because the cook did not have the right ingredients to make it, because this needs to be improved upon, and that's what I would like to showcase. The technical aspect needs to be improved upon. Furthermore, schools worked hard to minimize these barriers for students. This included providing laptops, which my opponent showcased in the cross-examination, that there was technical barriers. Schools are actually focusing on that, such as providing laptops, webcam, internet hotspots to students who needed them. Additionally, campus like our very own Modesto Junior College provides Zoom rooms that can be reserved for students who need fast internet. So it's not an issue of whether or not there's technological barriers. This online workspace is very useful. And I'd like to showcase that it is important that these pandemic era innovations do not disappear out of a desire to return to face-to-face classes. Furthermore, I have some answers to contention number 2, which is your distractions. First, distractions can prevent themselves at any time, regardless of situation, whether it be online or in person. Furthermore, just because a student is physically present in the classroom doesn't mean that they will not check their phone or daydream during a class session. Students will do that just because it happens. I understand. That is how it goes. Furthermore, this is also true for the negative point about multitasking. It can happen anywhere and anytime. Furthermore, I argue that it's healthy to move from the curated life of social media. The anxiety that negative describes is because we've gotten used to sharing only the perfect parts of our lives instead of showing up in the fullness of our humanity. Suggesting that online classes are bad because they cannot be curated ultimately reinforces the idea that we must hide any part of ourselves that has not been photoshopped. And that is why I believe online classes are vastly more useful. Furthermore, Zoom users can hide self-view if necessary, if that is truly a problem that my opponent would like to furthermore. And I'd like to briefly go over my own points, specifically around my contention number 1. My opponent showcased that 51.8% took an online course, and you said that that showcases that 48% or 49% would actually take in-person courses. I'd like to double down and showcase that that was actually knowing that this was during pandemic times. They chose to do online classes even though the in-person classes were available. And this is when still online classes were still just trying to get off the ground. And this is furthermore showcasing why online classes, when given to the students and the options are available, they will choose online classes because of the benefits that come along with it, specifically regarding part-time workers and parents. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks very much for that, Zachary. With that, we're going to turn the floor over to the negative. Joshua, this is your negative rebuttal and summary speech. You get a total of up to 5 minutes for this one, but please start us off with just a brief off-time roadmap so we know where you're headed.
First, I'm going to go ahead and respond to some of the refutations made by the AF in regards to my counter contentions. I'm then going to reiterate some of my points towards their contentions. And finally, Judge, I'm going to try to give you some voters today as to why I believe you should be voting in favor of the negation today. Starting my timer now. Thank you, Zachary, for on the side. Thank you, Judge. Audience, thank you all for being here and being present. This is an amazing debate on a topic that affects every single one of us. So here we are. So first and foremost, I want to just dive into some of the refutations made by the AF. So, my AF does agree that the systemic digital barriers that exist in the digital divide need to be addressed. This is something that we both agree on, but they did go down and talk about the aspect of schools lending out laptops and webcams and internet hotspots. Judge, the only thing I can say is yes, we do understand that the schools have these things. We don't have much data to show how much these things are being utilized, but internet hotspots don't do any good if you are in an area that is limited with coverage and limited with availability of internet. So I'm going to say that. And then we don't know the home settings of all these individuals. We don't know if those laptops can be kept safe. Or if that person is not concerned. School in most cases is a safe haven, Judge, for students to come and be away from their life and give themselves a chance to study in an environment that is focused specifically on what they're doing outside of their world. That's why we said it was important. And that's why we made the point of distractions, which we'll go to in a minute. And then I want to talk about the Zoom rooms, Judge. My only point in this is, my AF makes the claim that these innovations aren't just going to disappear. I'm not sure if my AF can say that. Budgetary wise, are we going to be able to support having these dual set technologies, having a pandemic era response and back to a traditional face-to-face learning, as well as the additional health measures that are going to have to be taken by schools, which is going to cost funding. This is all going to be things that's going to cost money. I don't know if these innovations can continue. It would seem like our schools were already strapped for budgets before, and that's without even taking into effect all the cleanliness and aspects that we now have to put into aspects of making the schools work. So, Judge, I'm going to dive into my second counter contention when it comes down to distraction. Yes, our AF does agree that distractions are a concern, but then they make the claim that students can easily just get on their phone in class. What I'm going to say is that when you are studying at home, Judge, you are on your device. Your device is actively in front of you. Whereas in class, teachers can promote an environment where students are encouraged to not keep their devices out. Yes, we can't control our students. Yes, this is our choice. We are adults. We are here studying as adults. This is our choice. But we can promote an environment where these notifications and distractions are not as prevalent or pestering to the students. Whereas when they're on their device, Judge, they're going to be actively being distracted. And that's something that we need to be looking at. That's a concern. As for this aspect of curated life and social media and everything, honestly, I don't even know why that has an aspect to our debate today. I'm not even really going to dive into it. Yeah, there are greater conversations to that, but today, our case today, Judge, is about online and in-person learning. It has nothing to do with social media and our impacts and how we interact in that world. I'm not here for, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to say to that. Okay, so I want to dive into, sorry, Judge. So as for the flexibility aspect, right, we came back and we did make claims, Judge, to their case where that it is not as flexible. With Zoom-based classes, you still have online times that you have to go into. It's not as flexible, Judge. So that's that case there. I'm just not seeing where they're going with that. As for modernized learning, we're not updating our infrastructure internally when we're going to be returning to internal situations. Our resolution today was just that online classes are to be preferable to in-person learning. And when we are going to be going back to in-person learning, face-to-face learning, when we find that people are having better experiences there, and they want to go back to there. And mind you, my AF makes the case, I forgot to mention that point, that people want to take online courses because they're taking them. They're taking online courses, Judge, because they have no other options. I forgot to make that point. There are no other options. They have to choose to take them because there's nothing else to take. And unless somebody like myself wants to just put their degree on hold, Judge, there really isn't anything there. Judge, I think the case is pretty simple. We're able to poke holes in a lot of what the AF said, and we made some very strong counterpoints that we believe need to be held. We think that in-person learning is the better option. And that's our case there, Judge. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a bunch for that, Joshua. With that, We'll go ahead and move into the final speech of this debate. Zachary, this is the second affirmative rebuttal and summary speech. You get a total of 3 minutes for this speech, but please start us off with just a brief off-time roadmap so we know where you're headed.
All right. So for this brief off-time roadmap, I'm going to be quickly going over the top of case, and then I will be going over towards my contention number 1 and 2, and then going over towards my opponent's contentions 1 and 2. So allow me to begin my time starting now. So regarding the contention number 1, or the top of case, I'd like to showcase the definitions that I put out for today, and specifically the one on asynchronous classes, because asynchronous does not require a classroom environment. It is online, and it is taken available towards the students. They are given a deadline, and this showcases that they're able to finish it before the deadline at any time, available to them. And that is why I'd like to go back towards my contention number 1, which is titled flexibility. The flexibility of asynchronous classes allow for these individuals, specifically the 80% of individuals that have part-time jobs, to be able to do these classes at their own leisure. This allows for greater flexibility for those individuals that need the extra time to do their own tasks, such as raising their kids or doing these part-time jobs. And that is why I'd like to showcase that this is another aspect of this debate that is preferable for online courses, because this asynchronous environment is specifically the best for individuals that have other commitments that I believe that they need to do and focus on throughout their everyday lives. So I'd like to furthermore go on towards advantage or contention number 2. Furthermore, which is showcase the amount of money being spent towards the colleges. My opponent showcased that a lot of these colleges actually need better spending. They need better spending for in-person. I'd like to showcase my point specifically in my second argument. The 5% of college spending is towards the IT department. This is a minuscule amount and needs to be improved upon because of the innovations that are currently happening due to the pandemic and this transition from in-person classes to online classes. My opponent showcased that they needed to focus more on in-person. I disagree. I believe that we should double down on online courses because of the availability of asynchronous classes, and if necessary, the synchronous classes which individuals would be able to take. Greater options is never a bad idea, and I believe that this would showcase the aspect of online courses and how that they are better in comparison to in-person courses. Furthermore, let me move on towards my opponent's negative contentions. Furthermore, regarding distractions, my opponent showcases that distractions are in front of you and that they are something that you have to do because you're online. You have to look at your computer, and these distractions can be everywhere, whether it be through apps or something similar to that. I'd like to showcase where I said again that phones are a distraction, whether you be in person or online. And when you go to in-person classes, it's just a different type of distraction, whether it be an individual whose phone is ringing during class because they forgot to put it on silent, or some other distraction. I believe that this online course, their negative contention of distractions is equaled out simply because of the fact there will always be distractions no matter where the environment is happening. Furthermore, I'd like to go on towards their negative number 1, which is a showcase of the restraints. I'd like to showcase what they showcased was the technical barriers. The technical barriers is simply MJC and specifically colleges are focusing on fixing these technical barriers. And I believe that the aspect of asynchronous and specifically the colleges focusing on technical barriers is something that ekes out for the online courses. And that is why I've won this debate. Thank you very much.
All right, and a big thank you to both of you, our debaters. Round of applause all the way around. Thanks for giving us a fantastic debate with a bunch of clash. We'll obviously turn it over to our audience to determine who the winner is. So good luck, y'all, on evaluating that. With that, I just want to turn things back over one last time to Professor Tori Schimpf to wrap up the evening.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We were so happy to showcase some of the competitive events speakers on the team have performed in spring 2022. If this looks like an activity you might enjoy, check us out on PiratesNet and enroll in Com 105 to join the team. Thanks for watching.